Hey there, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to build something super useful and fun. It's called the pros and cons list maker. If you ever found yourself stuck between two decisions, not sure whether to say yes or no to something, or just wanted a visual way to organize your thoughts, this is the perfect little tool for that. The app lets you type in any decision you're considering, like should I learn React or is it the time to buy a new laptop, and then helps you list out all the pros and cons related to the topic. Once you have added your points, the app automatically shows which side is stronger and gives you a simple verdict like the pros win or cons win. It's a great way to get clarity on things you're thinking through. What's really cool is that we will be building this from scratch using just HTML, CSS and JavaScript. No frameworks or libraries, just pure front-end code. So whether you are a beginner looking to get some hands-on practice or you are someone who enjoys creating practical projects with neat user interface, this tutorial is going to be right up your alley. So let's get started. First, I'm creating a div with class topic section or ID topic section. This section will be the first thing the user sees. It asks them what decision they are thinking about. We'll use the ID later in JavaScript to hide or show this section as needed. Inside the div, I'm adding a heading that asks the user what's your decision topic. It's just a simple prompt to help the user get started. Next, we have an input field where the user can type that decision topic. I have given it an ID of topic input so we can access it later with JavaScript. And the placeholder gives the helpful example, should I learn React? Finally, I am adding a start button. When the user clicks it, we will run a function called submit topic that will handle moving us to the next part of the app. And that's wrap up the topic entry section. Below that, I am adding another div. This one has an ID of app content. This is the main part of the app that shows up the user after the user clicks start. We'll keep this hidden by default and only reveal it once the topic is submitted. Here I am placing an empty heading. We'll use JavaScript to update the text with whatever topic the user entered earlier. This way the topic stays visible while they are adding pros and cons. Now I am creating a small input section where the user can add their thoughts. We have one input field where they can type something like improves career opportunity. Then we have two buttons, one to add the point to pros list and the other to the cons list. Both buttons call the same function, add item, but we pass either pros or cons as the argument to tell it where to put the point. Now we are creating two lists, one for pros and one for cons. Each list has a heading and an ordered list. I have added the IDs pro list and cons list so we can add items into them dynamically with JavaScript. Finally, we have got a scoreboard at bottom. This will show the current count of pros and cons and give a simple decision verdict like pros win or cons wins or it's a tie. Right now it shows pros 0 and cons 0 and a placeholder message. Let's decide. We'll update this live as the user interacts with the app. And that's it for the HTML. We have got a full structure in place, from entering the decision topic to adding pros and cons to displaying the final verdict. In the next part, we'll move on to styling everything with CSS to make it look modern and clean. Let's move on to styling our pros and cons list maker with CSS. We'll start by setting up some basic styles. First, I apply box sizing border box to all the elements using the universal selector. This helps to manage padding and border without affecting the total element size. In the body, I am using Poppins font for a clean and modern look. The layout is centered using Flexbox and I have set minimum height to 100 VH so that the app always fills the full height of the screen. The background is a nice gradient, white on the top half and soft purple on the bottom half, which gives the app a light and elegant feel. Now let's style the topic entry section. The class topics section is like a welcome card that asks the user to enter their decision topic. I have added a padding and a white background and rounded corners to make it look like a neat container. It also has a subtle shadow so it pops off the background. To add a little depth, I have used the before pseudo element to create a soft top shadow that looks like a panel edge. Inside this section, the heading is center aligned and styled with bold dark text for clarity. For input boxes, we keep things clean and functional. Padding makes typing comfortable, font size is set to 1 rem, and we use a light grey border with rounded corners. We also limit the width to 300 pixels or 90% on the smaller screens. Buttons use the same font as the rest of the app to maintain consistency. They are styled with rounded corners, some padding, and a smooth transition effect on hover. Inside the topic section, the main buttons use a bright purple color and change to darker shade when hovered. The input section is laid out using Flexbox with wrap support. So the inputs and buttons adjust nicely on smaller screens. We add gaps between the items and center them for a clean look. On very small screens like mobile, input fields expand to 100% width so everything stays usable and accessible. In the input section, we have two special buttons. The first one turns green, usually used for adding a new item, and the second one is red, likely for clearing or deleting. Both slightly fade on over using opacity. Now moving on to list container. This section uses Flexbox again to position pros and cons column side by side. We add some spacing between them using gap and allow them to wrap if there's not enough room. Each list inside it has a clean white background, padding, rounded corners and a subtle border. We also give it a soft box shadow for a modern card-like look. Inside each list we have H2 headings with the bold purple color and some spacing below for clarity. Every item in the list is styled using li selector. We give it a light background color, some padding and round edges. The content is spaced out using flexbox so the text stays on one side and the delete button on the other. Let's move on into the JavaScript part of our pros and cons list maker. This is where the app becomes interactive. We'll be adding functions to handle 4 key actions: submitting the decision topic, adding items to the pros and cons list, deleting those items, and updating the final scoreboard to reflect users' input in real time. Each function is small and focused, and together they make the entire app feel smooth and responsive. We'll start with submit topic function, which is triggered when the user clicks the start button. In this function, we first access the input field where the user entered their decision topic. We trim the value to remove any extra spaces just to make sure the input is clean. If the input field is empty, we alert the user and ask them to type in a topic before continuing. This is just a simple validation check. If the user has entered a valid topic, we then hide the topic entry screen and reveal the main app content. This is done by changing the display style of each section. Lastly, we update the topic heading in the main app area to show the user's decision topic so they are always reminded of what they are evaluating. This is small touch which really helps personalize the experience. Now let's talk about the add item function. This function is responsible for adding a new point to either the pros or cons list. It gets triggered when the user clicks either the green add to item pros button or the red add to cons button. The function first checks if the user typed something in the input box. If the input is empty, the function doesn't do anything. Again, a simple validation to check blank entries. If there is some text, we pass the text along with the type, either pros or cons, to another function called render item. Then we clear the input field so it's ready for the next entry, and finally we call a function called update score to refresh the scoreboard and latest to the latest count and a verdict. Now let's look at the render item function. This one is all about creating a new list item in the correct section, either under pros list or the cons list. Inside this function, we create a new list element and insert the user's text inside it. But we also add something extra, a small delete button next to each point. This allows the user to remove points later on, giving them flexibility to change their mind. When the delete button is clicked, the corresponding list item is removed from the list, and the update score function is called again to make sure the decision verdict is always up to date. This setup gives the app a nice balance of simplicity and control. The user can keep adjusting their list as their thoughts evolve. Now let's go back to CSS. For the delete button, we go for transparent background and a red color text matching our destructive action style. On hover, it underlines, giving a visual hint using an actual button background. The scorebar sits at the bottom and gives users a summary of their inputs. It uses a large font size, bold weight, and a centered layout. The white background, rounded corners, and the drop shadow make it look like a floating notification card. The ID app content section is hidden by default using display none, which means it won't show until maybe the user clicks a button or triggers an event through JavaScript. It also uses padding and a max width to keep things neat when reviewed. Lastly, we have included a responsive media query for screens smaller than 600 pixels. This ensures inputs span the full width for mobile usability and adjusts padding and gaps to utilize space. So overall, the CSS file is well organized, mobile friendly, and creates a clean modern UI with beautiful spacing, interactive buttons, and a visually appealing layout. It's fully responsive, accessible, and follows solid design principles like separation of concerns and visual hierarchy. This kind of layout is perfect for simple tools, productivity apps, or even personal projects where you want a polished front end experience without diving into complex frameworks. And finally, we have the update score function. This one calculates and displays the current score and decision verdict. It works by counting how many list items are inside the pros list and how many are inside the cons list. Based on this, it compares the two numbers. If there are more pros than cons, it displays the verdict pros win. If the cons are leading, it shows cons win. And if both sides are equal, it simply says it's a tie. This verdict is then displayed used inside the scoreboard section at the bottom of the app along with the latest count for each side. This real-time feedback makes the app feel alive, Every action you take immediately affects the outcome. So with just 4 functions, one to handle topic, one to add items, one to render them, and one to update score, we have built a fully functional interactive decision making tool. Whether someone is trying to decide on a career move or purchase or everyday choices, these little tools make the thought process more visual and engaging. And that's it. Our pros and cons list maker is complete. We have built a clean, responsive app using just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and made it fully interactive. If you found this tutorial helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more simple and useful front end projects. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.